Would you love your child to attend this school? This building is a beautiful, sturdy, updated school, equipped with a great heating and cooling system, with the latest textbooks and the latest science labs. It is also located in a great safe area with vast amounts of open space for a football, track, baseball, and soccer field. Hey, what are you doing here?
Now, why are you telling people these false news? You know inner city schools do not get the same luxurious things.
What are you talking about? Every school get the same treatment.
This is what an urban school typically looks like. They don't have air conditioning. Many don't even have grass on their outdoor lunch area. For 190 days out of the year, students sit in severely underfunded schools and no one says a thing about it.
Hey guys, and welcome to the darker side of education. Today's episode is education segregation. You may be wondering to yourself, education segregation, haven't we gotten rid of that already? The truth is, while we've integrated our schools racially, we're still segregated by the quality of education in urban school districts versus suburban school districts. You may be asking yourself, urban school districts versus suburban school districts? What's the difference? An urban school district is a large bureaucratic school system within a large city. It educates a mountainous amount of kids who face poverty, violence, cultural differences, and many different languages. Urban school districts are typically overcrowded and lack funds and resources, while suburban school districts can be found in small to medium-sized cities with people in the middle or upper class. Students who attend these schools are usually less distracted and do well overall.
New Jersey State Constitution gives every single student, or mandates that every single student in the state of New Jersey is eligible for a thorough and efficient public education. And that is without regard to where you live, what color you are, what race you are, the economic background. And I think we have a long way to go before we ensure that every student has access to a thorough and efficient public education.
My name is Danielle Farry, and I am the Research Director at Education Law Center here in Newark. I was educated in a suburban school system. I had a good experience in my high school. You know, we had plenty of resources, we had good teachers, small class sizes. So it was generally a good experience, but I guess the one downside I would say was that there was a complete lack of diversity in my school. I would say it was probably 95% white and wealthy. You know, we have a school funding formula in place that, if properly funded, would allocate funding according to needs of students all across the state. So students who need additional resources, whether they live in an urban district or a suburban district, would get those additional funds. But because the governor has refused to fund the formula for the past 7 or 8 years, basically the promise of that formula has been lost, and students across the state are not getting the resources they need, and we're actually seeing some of the disparities growing again instead of shrinking. To programs, especially in the urban districts, we've seen a loss of staff, a lot of layoffs, and class sizes increasing. All of those things are definitely happening because of this funding crunch.
If you look at outcomes, it comes down to the almighty dollar. Folks who have more resources and come from families with more wealth have access to better health care, have access to better mental health, ways to address their mental health issues, generally come to school with support. And so those are some reasons why, these inequities actually exist.
What we're experiencing here in Newark with education equality in New Jersey, period, it's just not happening here. It's happening all across the country. And that's a federal issue. That's a federal issue. In order for laws and policies to be changed at the local level, you have to go to the state level, and then you have to go to the federal level. So if we want things to change locally, we have to start at the top, because the decision makers, the policy makers and the decision makers are at the top, and it trickles down. So if we can get things changed in Congress and in the federal level, then things can change in the local level.
The Abbott decisions have been extraordinarily beneficial in that sense, which is something that my organization has basically spearheaded. So that provided a lot of additional funding for urban districts who had traditionally been funded at much lower levels than their suburban counterparts. But we still have a long way to go, and we've kind of a little bit been backsliding lately. You know, we have a school funding formula in place that, if properly funded, would allocate funding according to needs of students all across the state. So students who need additional resources, whether they live in an urban district or a suburban district, would get those additional funds. But because the governor has refused to fund the formula for the past 7 or 8 years, basically the promise of that formula has been lost, and students across the state are not getting the resources they need.
Without regard to socioeconomic disadvantage and other disadvantages that impact academic achievement, he would give every single one student about, I think it was $6,599. That would bring public school funding in our inner cities down to the levels of Mississippi and Alabama.
What I'm seeing here is the redistribution of funding that's not needed in the suburban school districts, right? First of all, in urban communities, they're overpopulated. You know, the population the monies that they would use for an urban community would not be the same monies that they would use for a suburban community, because the population is much smaller than in urban communities. In Newark, we're overpopulated. We have resources, but we need more resources because everybody comes to the urban communities for the resources.
You heard from the professionals, you heard from the parents. Now it's time to hear from me, a student that's living in.
I hope the future of Newark Public School District will include clean and updated buildings for all schools.
For the elimination of one Newark, so we can control where we go to get education instead of entrusting a lottery system. My name is Hanan Pickett, and I go to North 13th Street Tech, which is a Essex County technical vocational school. Okay, we're gonna be on the same level, but if we need more than the other person, then how are we gonna have the same thing? Like, if we're getting underfunded and you just gonna give us a little bit of money, and they're getting overfunded and they still get that nice amount of money, like what are we gonna do? We just gonna be stuck with that little bit of pocket change that we have. Mean that we're like still getting the same benefits as the next. Like, okay, we used to get this little bit of money, but we need more. We have people like that speak like different languages that need help with that. Some people who are like special education that need help with that, and like it's like we need help in general. And then it's like they get all the benefit of the doubt, and we just stuck with like the little leftovers that we can't really do anything with. So it's like, why can't we like raise the bar and get what we need in order to be successful?
My name is Christine. I go at University High School. The biggest difference between urban and suburban schools would have to be everything. In suburban schools, you will learn like at a faster pace. Like, I came to New Jersey from the suburbs of Pennsylvania in 8th grade. And when I got there, I was ahead of math, so I just sat there for a good 2 months and did absolutely nothing. The teacher would give me a test and I would pass it within, I'll get 100 on the test after taking it for like 5 minutes, and she'll be like, well, since you already know this stuff, I guess you might just sit there and just wait for everybody else to catch up with you. And nobody caught up with me, so I just sat there for a good 3 months in the classroom, just sitting there twiddling my thumbs instead of her having a one-on-one lesson with me so I could at least be productive. But in suburban schools, perfect example. When I played softball this year, we had no new equipment. We could barely afford getting sophomore uniforms. So, okay, we could, okay. So I played softball this year. When we played against teams like Milburn, they had their own field, first of all, and their field was gorgeous. It was so big, the grass was well kept and everything. And when it was, usually when you play softball, unless you're batting, that's the only person that wears helmet. But they have helmets, these special helmets for the infielders. And I was like, Coach, why don't we have those helmets? Oh, well, we barely had enough money to get these new bats. Mind you, there was only 4 new bats. It's not like there was a lot of new bats, it was just 4. Like, it's disappointing to see that other schools have different things, but I guess you wouldn't know that they have different stuff because we only know what we see. And